Disclaimer: it's inspired by reality, shaped by imagination.
Nobody expected this to happen on The View. When Joy Behar asked a simple question, are younger generations abandoning traditional American family values? It set the stage for one of the most explosive on-air moments in the show's history. Mark Wahlberg, known for his tough guy roles and outspoken Catholic faith, walked in ready to promote his new film. Instead, he found himself in a heated ideological battle with Joy, a veteran host who has never shied away from controversy. What started as light banter quickly turned into a generational clash. Joy argued that traditional values are outdated, restrictive, and even harmful in today's world. Mark fired back, saying America is losing its foundation because families no longer prioritize faith, loyalty, and personal responsibility. The audience? Dead silent. The tension? Thick enough to cut with a knife. By the end, voices were raised, chairs were shifting, and Mark Wahlberg's final words before walking off left everyone in stunned silence. What happened next shocked viewers, and now the clip is going viral for all the right reasons.
The stage was set for a typical mid-morning segment on The View. The sunlit studio, the bright smiles, and the energy of the audience all promised a breezy, celebrity-friendly conversation. Mark Wahlberg had just walked in, dressed in a tailored navy suit, paired with his signature chain peeking out from under his crisp white shirt. He greeted the hosts warmly, giving Joy Behar a quick nod before settling into his seat. "Mark Wahlberg," Joy announced with her trademark smile, clapping as the audience erupted in cheers. "Big star, big movies, and, as I understand, big opinions." Mark chuckled, leaning into the banter. "I try to keep 'em small when I can," he said, his Boston accent instantly recognizable. The opening questions were softballs: his new film, the demanding workout routines, even a light-hearted joke about his burger chain. Mark played along, cracking jokes and sharing stories about being a father of 4. The energy was warm, almost deceptively so. But Joy, never one to leave a hot-button topic untouched, steered the conversation toward the theme of his film: family, loyalty, and resilience. "Mark, your movie talks about sticking together, about the power of family," she said, her tone curious but edged with something sharper. "Do you think those ideas still resonate today? Because some people would argue that traditional family values are kind of old-fashioned now." The audience shifted, sensing the tension in the air. Mark smiled, but it wasn't the easy grin from a moment ago. It was tight, cautious. "I think family's more important than ever," he said firmly. "Faith, commitment, showing up for each other, those aren't old-fashioned. Those are timeless." Sonny Hostin jumped in before Joy could respond. "But Mark, what about people who say the definition of family has changed, that it's not just the traditional mom-dad-kids picture anymore?" Mark nodded respectfully. "Look, I'm not here to judge anybody's choices, but for me and for a lot of folks, family is the backbone of everything. You lose that, you lose community, you lose values." Joy tilted her head, her smile turning wry. "Well, maybe," she countered, "we're finally letting people live without the pressure of what you're calling values. Maybe those so-called traditions weren't serving everyone equally." The temperature on set rose a few degrees. Mark leaned forward in his chair, his hands clasped. "I hear you, Joy, I really do, but I think when people stop prioritizing family, when they stop thinking about something bigger than themselves, that's when society starts to crumble, and I'm seeing that happen." There it was, the first real fault line in the conversation. The audience stayed quiet, eyes darting between them as Joy adjusted her glasses and gave a short laugh. "Mark, you sound like my grandfather," she teased, but there was steel behind her tone. "I'm not sure younger generations are buying what you're selling." "Maybe that's the problem," Mark shot back lightly, though his jaw flexed as he spoke. "Maybe we stopped selling it. Maybe we gave up too easy." For a moment the air seemed to still, like the calm before a storm. The other hosts glanced at each other, debating whether to jump in or let the tension simmer. They chose the latter. Joy leaned back, her arms crossing, as the smile faded into something more deliberate. Well, I think a lot of young people would say they're creating new values, ones that don't box people in. And frankly, some of the old ways, they weren't so great, Mark. Mark opened his mouth, ready to respond, but Joy's tone had shifted from playful to provocative. And that's when the polite conversation began to unravel. The stage was no longer just a set for light entertainment. It had transformed into a battlefield of ideals, generations, and beliefs. The audience didn't know it yet, but this wasn't just an interview anymore. This was about to become a cultural showdown, one that would have social media exploding by the end of the hour.
The polite veneer cracked as soon as Joy leaned in, her voice carrying that unmistakable mix of sarcasm and challenge. "So, Mark," she said, her glasses catching the studio lights, "when you say society's crumbling because people aren't following traditional family roles, are you saying single parents, blended families, LGBTQ families, they're part of the problem?" The audience let out a collective ooh, and the tension surged like an electric current. Mark exhaled, visibly measuring his words. "Joy, come on," he said, his tone steady but firmer than before. "I never said that. What I'm saying is, we've gotten away from commitment, from putting others before ourselves. It's not about labels, it's about values like loyalty, responsibility, love." "Love?" Joy echoed, eyebrows raised. "Love isn't exclusive to your definition of family, Mark. Plenty of people are loving and committed without fitting into some nostalgic 1950s mold." Mark leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "See, that's the thing. I'm not talking about some outdated, picture-perfect fantasy. I grew up in a rough neighborhood. I've seen what happens when there's no structure, no accountability. Crime goes up. Kids suffer. Families, whatever form they take, they need a foundation. And too often, we've just let that go." Sonny Hostin jumped in, sensing the heat, but trying to steer it toward nuance. "Mark, I get what you're saying about stability, but don't you think younger generations are rejecting certain traditions because they feel those systems failed them? Look at the divorce rates, the scandals. People see hypocrisy." Mark nodded, his jaw tight. "Sure, there's hypocrisy. People mess up. I've messed up plenty. But throwing away the whole idea because some people fail, that's like saying we should stop believing in honesty because some people lie." Joy gave a short, sharp laugh. "That's a cute analogy," she said, her voice dripping with skepticism. "But let's be real. When you talk about getting back to values, it sounds like a lecture, like you're scolding an entire generation for wanting to live life on their own terms." Mark didn't flinch. "If telling people to take responsibility sounds like a lecture, then maybe we need more lectures," he shot back, his voice rising slightly. The audience broke into mixed reactions, some clapping, others murmuring in surprise. Sarah Haynes, ever the peacekeeper, raised her hands. Okay, let's all take a breath." But Joy wasn't letting up. She leaned closer, locking eyes with Mark. "Mark, do you even hear yourself? You're sitting here saying society's crumbling because women aren't in the kitchen and kids aren't saying grace at dinner." Mark's head snapped up. "That's not what I said, Joy. Don't twist my words." His voice carried a sharp edge now, the Boston grit cutting through. Joy smirked, arms crossed like a boxer in the corner. "Common sense to you," she said coolly, "but to a lot of people watching, it sounds like judgment." Mark shook his head, his face flushed. "If wanting better for our kids is judgment, then yeah, guilty as charged." The camera cut to the other hosts, their expressions a mix of awe and discomfort. Social media producers in the wings were already typing furiously. They knew this clip would explode online. And then Joy delivered the line that would send the conversation into overdrive. "Mark," she said, tilting her head with that famous smirk. "Mark, maybe you should worry less about lecturing America and more about the fact that your idea of family sounds like a Hollywood PR stunt." Gasps filled the studio. Mark froze for a second, his jaw tightening like a steel trap. Then he leaned in, his eyes low and dangerous. "Say that again, Joy," he said slowly, his eyes locking on hers. The storm was no longer brewing.
It had hit full force, and no one, not even the producers, could predict what would happen next. The studio air felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. Joy's remark about Mark's family being a Hollywood PR stunt didn't just cross a line, it obliterated it. The audience, sensing blood in the water, leaned forward in their seats. Mark inhaled sharply, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the armrest. "You want to go there, Joy?" His voice was low, but shaking with restrained anger. "You want to take shots at my family, my kids?" Joy didn't blink. She raised her eyebrow, her smirk unwavering. "Mark, I'm just saying, you're on here preaching about real American families while living in a Beverly Hills mansion. It's a little hard for people to take you seriously." That was it. Mark sat forward so fast, his mic wire tugged against his jacket. "Let me make something clear," he said, his voice suddenly booming with raw emotion. "I grew up with nothing. Nothing. 7 brothers and sisters in a 3-bedroom apartment in Dorchester. I've worked for everything I have, and the only reason I'm sitting here today is because of those values you're mocking." The audience erupted in applause, loud and long, like a pressure valve releasing. But Joy wasn't done. "Oh, Mark," she said with that tone, half dismissive, half provocative. "You've done well for yourself. Good for you. But don't confuse your personal success story with some universal truth. Times are different. People are different." That was it. Mark sat forward so fast his mic wire tugged against his jacket. Different doesn't always mean better. Look around. Depression, suicide, loneliness, all at record highs. Why? Because we've told people nothing matters. Marriage doesn't matter. Family doesn't matter. Just do whatever feels good in the moment. And guess what? People are miserable. The studio went eerily quiet. Even the other hosts were rattled, their eyes darting between Mark and Joy like referees watching a fight spiral out of control. Sunny Huston cleared her throat, her voice tentative. "Mark, those are real issues, yes, but don't you think there's more to it than—" Mark cut her off, his voice breaking, not from anger this time, but something deeper. "I've buried friends because they had no one. I've sat with kids who'd rather join a gang than go home because there's no home to go to." His eyes glistened now, his jaw trembling. "Don't sit there and tell me it's all fine. It's not fine. We're losing something that matters." The audience murmured, some visibly emotional, others clapping softly. Mark's rawness was undeniable and disarming. For a brief moment, Joy looked taken aback. Her smirk faltered just slightly before returning like armor. "So what's your solution, Mark?" she asked, her voice sharpening. "Force people back into marriages? Tell women to stay in toxic relationships because family first? Is that your big plan?" Mark slammed his hand on the table, not hard enough to break it, but enough to make every coffee mug rattle. The audience gasped audibly. "Don't twist this into something it's not," he thundered. "I'm not saying anyone should stay in a bad situation. I'm saying we should fight for what's good. We should stop treating commitment like it's disposable. We should teach our kids that love isn't just a feeling. It's a choice you make every day." The audience this time was deafening. People in the back rows stood. Social media interns backstage exchanged frantic looks. This was already trending. Hashtag Wahlberg versus Behar was about to blow up Twitter. But Joy, oh Joy, she wasn't backing down. She leaned in so close, the cameras caught every line of tension on her face. "And what about people who choose differently, Mark? People who don't want kids or marriage? Are they broken in your book too?" Mark didn't hesitate. His voice was calmer now, but heavier, like stone. "They're not broken, but we're broken as a culture when we stop valuing connection, when we act like family, whatever that looks like, isn't worth sacrificing for. That's when everything else starts to fall apart." For the first time all day, Joy had no quick retort. The silence between them was thick, pulsing with something that felt bigger than TV ratings. Then Mark stood. The camera tried to follow, but he was already pulling off his mic. "You want sound bites, Joy?
Fine, here's one. You can mock me all you want, but I'm fighting for something real, and I'm not going to apologize for that. The audience roared, half in cheers, half in shock. Joy's lips curled into a tight smile, but her eyes flickered just for a second with something like respect. And that's when everyone realized this wasn't over, not by a long shot.
The tension in the studio was thick enough to cut with a knife. The audience still buzzed from Mark's last statement, but the producers were panicking in the control room. This was supposed to be a lighthearted segment about family values, not a full-blown cultural showdown. Joy adjusted her glasses, her lips curling into a sly grin as she sensed an opportunity to reclaim control. "Mark," she said slowly, voice dripping with sarcasm, "you sound like a guy who wants to drag America back to the 1950s. What's next? Telling women to stay barefoot and pregnant?" The audience erupted with gasps and a few nervous laughs. That line hit like a slap across the table. Mark froze for a second, his eyes narrowing. Then he leaned forward, his voice like steel. "Don't you dare put words in my mouth, Joy. Don't you dare. You don't know me. You don't know what I've seen. And if you think this is about controlling women, then you've completely missed the point." Joy smirked, clearly enjoying the chaos. "Well, enlighten me then, Mark. Tell America why you're the moral compass we should all follow." Mark's jaw flexed, his Boston accent thickened the way it does when he's past the point of politeness. "You think this is a joke? You think families falling apart is something to score TV ratings with? I've seen kids destroy their lives because nobody cared enough to show up for them. And yeah, I care about that. If that makes me old-fashioned, then call me old-fashioned all day long." The audience erupted in applause again, louder than before. Some even stood up. Joy tried to speak over the cheers, but the energy had shifted, hard. "Mark," she said louder now, "what you're doing is shaming people who don't fit into your little box. The world is changing and you can't handle it." That was the detonator. Mark pushed back his chair with a loud scrape, the sound cutting through the noise like a gunshot. The camera swung to follow him as he stood, towering over the table. His voice, booming and raw, echoed across the studio. "You think I can't handle change? I've adapted my whole damn life. I've gone from jail to Hollywood. I've changed more than you can imagine. But I will never stop saying that family matters. Never. Because when we stop saying that, we lose everything." The audience exploded into cheers and whistles. Phones shot up in the air, live streaming the chaos. Joy tried to fire back, but Mark was already ripping off his mic pack, the wires bangling from his hand. Mark, sit down," Sarah Haynes called out, her voice cracking as she tried to restore order. Whoopi was stunned, her eyes wide, as if even she didn't know what to do. Mark turned to the audience, raising his voice one last time. "America, you want to know what I believe? Love your family. Fight for them. Don't let the world tell you they don't matter, because they do." He tossed the mic on the table with a loud clack and strode toward the wings. The cameras followed, catching the backs of crew members scrambling to make way. The live audience was on its feet now, clapping, shouting, recording every second. "Wow," Joy said finally, forcing a laugh as she turned back to camera. "Well, that was dramatic." The other hosts sat frozen, the faces a mix of shock and discomfort. Whoopi, trying to wrap up the chaos, murmured, "We'll be right back after this break." The music swelled awkwardly as the show cut to commercials, but the damage was done. Within minutes, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok were ablaze. Hashtag Wahlberg walk-off. Hashtag Joy versus Mark. Clips of Mark's fiery exit racked up millions of views before the segment even ended. And in living rooms across America, people weren't just entertained, they were divided. Was Mark a hero for defending family values, or a hypocrite clinging to the past? One thing was certain,
This episode of The View had just become a cultural earthquake.
The cameras faded to black, but the chaos didn't stop when The View went to commercial. In fact, that was just the beginning. Within 10 minutes, hashtags like Wahlberg walk-off and Joy versus Mark were trending worldwide. Clips of Mark slamming his mic down and storming off the stage flooded TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. Millions of views, thousands of comments, and a tidal wave of opinions. America was officially split down the middle. One viral tweet read, "Mark Wahlberg just said what half of America's been thinking. Family does matter. Respect for standing up and walking out." Another shot back. Mark Wahlberg needs to realize it's 2025, not 1955. Families look different now. Get over it. Talk shows picked up the story. Podcasts dissected every word. Late-night comedians turned it into their opening monologue. It wasn't just a celebrity walk-off. It was a cultural lightning rod, sparking a debate far bigger than Mark or Joy. And behind the scenes, sources say producers were in full damage control mode, scrambling to turn a heated clash into a ratings win. Insider leaks claimed some hosts were furious at Joy for poking the bear, while others whispered that Mark had been itching to make a statement all along. Meanwhile, Mark himself? Hours later, he broke his silence with a single Instagram post. "I said what I believe. No apologies. Hashtag family first." That post alone pulled in 1.8 million likes in 2 hours. Joy didn't stay quiet either. She fired back on Twitter with her trademark wit. "If defending progress makes me the villain, then so be it. See you all tomorrow on The View." But this wasn't just a TV moment. It was a cultural conversation about values, change, and the America we're living in now. Are younger generations really abandoning traditional family values, or are they simply redefining what family means? One thing's for sure. This clash between a Hollywood tough guy and a daytime TV firebrand will go down as one of the most unforgettable moments in The View's history. What do you think? Was Mark right to stand up and walk out, or did Joy have a point about embracing change? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you love this intense showdown, make sure to subscribe for more celebrity clashes, explosive debates, and viral TV moments you'll never forget. Because after today, one thing is certain: daytime television will never be the same.